Hi everyone and welcome to another video. One of the few times you'll ever see me probably do a video outside of a car or not around cars. So first time at a desk, and that's because I really wanted to go to an auction last weekend. I'd planned to go and unfortunately last minute I wasn't able to. So you may have seen my usual videos where I walk around, show you the cars, particularly cars I'm interested in, give you my thoughts on the value and condition of them. And I think that's really important when you're assessing values of cars. Unfortunately, life gets in the way sometimes. I couldn't go, and so today's video is actually a review of a recent Iconics auction, which I will look through the online catalogue and show you some of the prices, pick out some of the ones I think are particularly interesting, and some of the ones that I was actually thinking of buying. I'll share my screen and show you through the results of the auction. So this was the classic sale at the NEC, part of the Practical Classics and Restoration Show 2025 by Iconic Auctioneers. So slightly different format today. Don't fear, I will still be doing my live auction reviews. I've got a couple coming up. In fact, I've got one with lots of editing to do, and I've got another two in the diary in the next 3 or 4 weeks or so. So do watch out for those if you're interested. So let's get cracking. So starting off here, there was actually a couple of barn find Mark II Golf GTIs, both 8 valves, and you know, you'll see later on as I go through the auction, good ones of these are fetching pretty good money now. One of them sawn since 2006, one of them sawn since 2009, and they sold accordingly, obviously needed some restoration work, one for 2,250, the other for 6,500, which seems quite a lot for me for a car that's been off the road for getting on for 20 years. Obviously it's going to need some recommissioning, possibly extensive restoration. This is where you really need to be able to look at the car and assess what it's like. I'll just show you, this is the one that went for 6.5 grand. It sounds a lot of money for a barn find condition car to me, a Mark II Golf. And of course I say only the 8 valve, not the 16 valve. Maybe it's in good condition, but it would seem quite a risky purchase to me. It's also on 129,000 miles, so it's not as if it's even low mileage. Anyway, there we go. The one at 2.5 grand, fair enough, but 6.5 seems a lot to me. Interestingly, there were a few Focus RSs, Mark I, Mark II and Mark III Focus RSs, and some really interesting prices actually. So I'll just find here, this is a 2009 Mark II Focus RS. I'm always interested in these. I had a modified Mark II Focus ST. You know, I tried to make it as RS-like as I could, but the reality is the RS is a much better car in many ways. So although I modified the suspension on my ST, remapped it, various different things, you know, the RS is a lot better. I melted my clutch pretty quickly because it didn't have the RS, the RS clutch. So this is 2009. It's only done 40,000 miles, looked in great condition, and it sold for £27,000. Which seems to be kind of the going rate. I think that's a lot of money for a Mark II. A very good Mark I will sell for that kind of money as well. But interestingly, the Mark IIs are now getting more expensive, or should I say the Mark IIIs have now dropped below the price of an average Mark II, it seems. So these Mark IIs really holding their value well, actually. 27,000 for a Mark II Focus RS, getting on for 20 years old. Lovely cars, I mean for me just limited by being front wheel drive unfortunately. Next is a car I was really disappointed. I had my eye on this car. I've been looking at quite a few. This is an Aston Martin DB7 Series 1, a manual, so this is before they put the V12 in, the supercharged inline 6. And there aren't a huge number of manuals of these, and even fewer that are in good condition. This is 73,000 miles, which for one of these is relatively low. Condition of these can be rubbish. They rot, particularly around the sills. The floor pan has some issues. I've looked at a couple over the last year or so and decided not to buy them. They just weren't very good condition, tatty. It looks decent enough. It's got some receipts, but unless you look through the paperwork, it can be slightly hard to tell how good those are. From the photos, on the face of it, it looks decent enough. Again, difficult to tell remotely, but it went for £10,500, just over. I think that's really pretty good value for a manual, relatively low miles. If the condition's good there, I think that's a good value DB7. So I'm a bit gutted I missed out on that one. So another car I was actually quite interested in looking at, I In fact, I contacted the auction house about it, the C5 RS6. So if you've seen my videos, you may know that I actually bought a C5 RS6 at another auction at roughly the end of last year sometime. I thought that was reasonably good value. It's a great fun car. I've enjoyed driving it so far. I've still got it. And this one was 2003, quite low miles. It looks as though it's probably unmodified. So running about 450 horsepower or so on these, but only 58,000 miles, which for one of these is actually quite rare. You don't see them a huge amount under 100,000 miles. They tend to have been cars that were the bought and well used, high mileage. So I didn't actually hear back from the auction house with the questions I'd got. I was seriously considering buying another one. I know I'm probably daft, purely because this one was quite low miles. I liked it. Looked good, as you can see here. Again, it's hard to tell. The devil here is in the gearbox. You can't see this at auction. I'd have wanted, ideally, to see it change through the gears, check there's no clunking, etc. On the face of it, looks a decent car, and it sold for £9,500. So I probably wouldn't have bought it for that money. I think it's a fair price, don't get me wrong. It's about what I'd expect. I was only interested if it went cheaply. So here's another interesting car, a TVR CERBERA. So about as high risk as you get, I think, when it comes to buying second-hand cars. Obviously, this is the Speed 6 engine, 6-cylinder, 4 litre, notorious for needing engine rebuilds every few thousand miles in its early life, I think. I think later on it got a bit better. Let's see here if it says it's been sawn in recent years. Doesn't seem to say anything about an engine rebuild, which would be quite a dangerous one for me. Also, the chassis, of course, on these is very prone to rot, so you really need to look under these. Now, why I'm interested is because there was actually one on collecting cars recently that I was very interested in. I was thinking about buying, I think that went for something like £18,500, something like that. This is buy it now. It was unsold at this auction. So there's some photos of the chassis, which looks like it's been treated, so you can't see any rust that might have been there. Looks decent enough though. Buy it now, £20,000, fairish price. Again, I was only interested if it was a bargain. That's why I go to auctions ultimately. So next up, a perennial auction favourite, BMW 635 CSI. So this is an E24, 1987. Only 50,000 miles. In my mind, an undesirable colour in red. Very low miles. I've seen a huge amount of these at auction, and they always look remarkably good on high mileage. It's very rare. I can't remember the last time I've seen a low mileage one like this. They're usually well over 100,000 miles and seem to wear those miles well. Good ones of these, high teens perhaps. This one sold for 23,500. Given the low miles, it seems fair enough. 20 service stamps, off the road for a while, but it looks in decent nick from what you can tell online. So here's an XK, Jaguar XK 4.2s. This is the naturally aspirated 4.2 litre V8. This is an X150 era. I actually have an X100 XKR, the 4 litre supercharged. Personally, I wouldn't get one of these that's naturally aspirated because it's 300 horsepower versus 380 or whatever it is, a bit more, 390 horsepower with a supercharger. So for me, it's a no-brainer to get the R. This one, 52,000 miles, so relatively low, sold for about £8,500. It's still quite a lot of car for your money. Extensive service history, looks like it's been very well cared for. Looks excellent condition, particularly inside. Again, just from what you can see on the photos, but it's got to be supercharged for me. The roof on this one, by the way, looks a little bit dodgy. Yeah, I'd be slightly wary of this roof on here, looking at the pictures. It certainly looks like it needs cleaning and treatment at the very least, but it's hard to tell how bad that roof might be. A Bentley Turbo, these are such a lot of car for your money. Obviously high risk, come with some very big bills. This one's on 82,000 miles, so kind of reasonable. Obviously turbocharged, but it was unsold, and buy it now for a shade under 18,000. I mean, it's hard to think of more car for your money for that kind of price. I quite like this era of Bentley, actually. I think it's still quite classy. I'm not such a big fan of modern Bentleys, I have to say. These are enormous great things, super luxury. You get a lot for your money, as I said. And then next up is a garage find Ford Capri 2.8i, so one of the most desirable Capri models. These are fetching good money, mid to high teens for decent ones now. Let's just see if we can see how long this has been off the road. It looks like it's been off the road for 12 years or something. So kind of barn find condition. It's on, what's that, 99,000 miles. And it sold for £12,000, including fees. All the prices I give you are including all the fees as well from the auction house. That seems like an awful lot of money to me for something. It's a bit of an unknown quantity, let's be honest. This is barn or garage find condition. It's been sitting there for years. It's going to need at least recommissioning. I suppose someone's taken a gamble on this and assumes they'll make a few thousand out of it, or just get to restore it and keep it. So I'm always interested in Land Rover Defenders. I've had a lot over the time. I still have a Land Rover Defender Wolf, so a 300 TDI, 1997, that one, 110-inch wheelbase. This one is very interesting. So this is a 2010 Defender 90. So this would have been a Puma engine, I guess, which aren't quite desirable, these later models, in my opinion. I prefer the more agricultural versions of Land Rovers from old. This one is fairly unique. It's only 25,000 miles, which in itself is rare, but it was supplied in 2010 for King Charles and has then gone into a royal collection of cars. By the sounds of it, a private owner who collects ex-royal cars. Anyway, it's gone for what I think of as silly money just to have that tag of being ex-King Charles. Nearly £68,000 someone has spent on a 2010 Defender 90. I mean, crazy. Absolutely crazy. So it's not a special edition or anything. Yeah, okay, it's in, probably superb condition, and you've got the tag of it being ex-King, but £68,000. I mean, just madness, really, in my opinion. But fair enough. If that's what you like, that's what you get. You may have seen my recent video from Bolesworth auction, so that was one of my normal in-person live videos. You saw there was a Honda S2000. I think it went for something like £14,000, possibly a bit more. I was quite surprised how expensive that seemed. This one, 2002, again, it's convertible. It looks like it's got the factory hardtop, yes. Only 48,000 miles, and it sold for £13,000. So that one seems like decent value. It's about what I'd expect. So we're back from that garage find Capri 2.8i to actually one that's in good condition. So this is 1981 2.8 injection. It's had a comprehensive rebuild apparently, so one assumes this is in as perfect condition as you're going to get for a Capri, and this sold for £22,500. I mean, it looks absolutely immaculate. This, you can see. Look at the engine bay there, for example. Yeah, this looks really fabulous. So maybe the one that was £10,000 less than this or whatever it sold for wasn't such bad value after all, but you need to spend a lot of money to get a car in that good condition. So a few Mercedes 500 SLs from different eras in this auction, quite a few actually. This one is an R129, this is early 90s. 5-litre V8, of course. I think they were around about 300 horsepower, were they? 322 horsepower, it says here. Yeah, this one was sold with no reserve, and it sold for about £7,000. I think this is really hard to judge because I've seen such variable qualities of these. I guess with any car from this era. To me, it looks like there could be some paintwork mismatching issues on some of the panels. Perhaps my eyes are deceiving me, or it's just the light. Yeah, hard to judge that one, I think. And 143,000 miles, obviously quite high miles there. Then another quite interesting car because of its history is this Series 3 Jaguar E-Type. This is a V12. It started life as a fixed hardtop, and then during a restoration in the 90s, got converted to a roadster. So it's left-hand drive, and it's also got a 5-speed manual gearbox. So it's had some updating as well. So not original, I guess, is my point. It sold for £40,000, which I guess is kind of reasonable for a kind of fully working, updated. If you don't mind the non-originality, seems like quite a good value V12 E-Type. And then coming up is a Rover SD1. Cars I always like to look off. I used to see these on UK roads all the time when I was a kid, of course. And the 3.5 litre V8 SD1s have really picked up a lot in recent years, and the values of these well into the teens, mid-teens or more. This one was offered without reserve and in need of a refresh, apparently. So quite how bad a condition it was, I don't know, but obviously needs some work. I mean, the pictures don't make it look horrendous, but this is why I always go to auctions in person. You just cannot assess the value without properly looking at it yourself. But it sold for just under £5,000, which on the face of it looks like great value. And then a 1991 Mercedes 560 SEC. So these are great cars, pillarless coupe, extremely elegant. Top of the range, the 560, of course. 5.5 litre V8 in these. And this looks in great condition. It didn't sell. It's had a full respray, been well looked after by all accounts. Looks lovely. It didn't sell, and it's listed at £34,000 to buy it now. It's quite a lot of money, but these good ones of these do fetch a lot. Seems a little bit steep to me. So then a really interesting car, Ford Escort RS Turbo. This is a Series 2. These have obviously been fetching strong money for quite some time now, and increasingly so. This one is special because it's only 6,000 miles. It's got a ton of history, 6,000 miles. I mean, it looks absolutely immaculate as you'd expect on that kind of mileage. You can see the interior here, and look at that engine bay for a 1989 car. This is, you know, a rare car to find one like this. Consequently, it sold for almost £51,000. I mean, lovely car. You pay such a premium for these low mileage cars, particularly fast forwards, etc. It's a lot of money for an RS Turbo, but yeah, you won't probably find another one like it. And then another really interesting car, an RS 500, so Sierra Cosworth RS 500. These are pretty rare. I was quite interested by this one. So it has been stored for about 15 years and then prepped for the sale, so recommissioned, extensively modified, including engine, loads of engine mods, etc. Used to be running 500 horsepower, now taken back to about 330 horsepower. Why I think this one is particularly interesting is sold for £75,000. I saw one recently at an auction, and again you can see this auction in my video. It's the one at Race Retro, and that sold for £100,000, I think. So this is substantially less. I think the other one was pristine and in black, which looked amazing. I don't think the colour of this one is quite as good. Perhaps people get put off by the fact it's been off the road for a long time and it was so extensively modified. I don't know. But as RS 500s go, that's actually not bad value, although it's a lot of money. I should probably caveat all this by saying that I'm really not an expert on any of these cars. I'm just an enthusiast. I have a bit of knowledge here and there. I go to a lot of auctions. I enjoy looking at these cars. I enjoy learning about them. I may be off the mark on some of these, so please do correct me if I'm wrong. Give me your thoughts in the comments. So then I thought that RS 500 was relatively cheap. Here's one I think that seemed really expensive to me, and help me out here in the comments if I'm missing something obvious. So this is 94 Clio Williams, phase 1. One of only 390. It needs some recommissioning. So it's presumably been off the road for a while. It sold for £25,000. Now, I can't quite work that out myself. To me, that seems way above market value. And why I say that is I was watching one on Collecting Cars, the kind of online auction site. They looked like decent value, it looked like decent condition. It sold for £15,000. So I'm a bit mystified by this one. I'm probably missing something obvious. I'm not particularly familiar with these cars, but it seemed quite strong money to me. Then another car I have to admit I know very little about. I'm just showing you this because I was amazed by what this fetched. So it's a Fiat Uno Turbo. So 1988, I think one of only 20 on UK roads currently, it says. I mean, this sold for over £30,000. I just couldn't believe it. 47,000 miles. Now, it's in exceptional condition, and you can see from the photos, it's obviously been fastidiously maintained. I mean, look at that interior. You know, these are the types of cars that don't necessarily get well looked after throughout their whole life. That engine bay is just immaculate. I mean, clearly a really nice car. I just couldn't believe it was worth £30,000. But there you go, that shows my lack of knowledge on Fiats. And then another one just interesting because of the kind of the relative values of the different generations here. So I talked about the Focus RSs, and we'll see some more of those later in the video. Here we're talking about BMW M3s. So there's a couple of M3, so these are E36 Evolutions. So with the 3.2 engine. These came obviously before the E46 M3. This is relatively low miles for an E36, 64,000 miles. You can't see the condition of these. I've seen some in the flesh. Some are good, some are hopeless. So you really need to look at this. But it's sold for £14,000. Now the E46 has really dipped quite a lot in the recent years, and I'm quite surprised by that. You can pick up an E46 M3 in fairly decent condition for 10 grand now. So, you know, you're paying significantly more for an E36 Evolution now, which is quite surprising. And then I think this is a great value car, so a Caterham. I have a GBS 0, so another kind of Lotus 7 copy, if you like. This is a 2004 with the Rover K series engine, 1600 Supersport, so fairly low end of the spectrum, I think it's fair to say, in terms of Caterhams. But well looked after, 13,000 miles, which isn't excessive in 21 years. You know, and I think this is great value. It's sold for £12,000. It's very hard to find any Caterham under £15,000. So although it's kind of lower end of the range, it's clearly been well looked after. I think that's excellent value. I'm not sure auctions are the best place for Caterhams to sell if you want good money, to be honest. So we saw a 635 CSI. Now we've got the M635 CSI. So these always fetch really good money. I've seen these go recently, you know, well into the kind of mid-30s, low to mid-30s or something. This one, only 25,000 miles and owned by one family since it was bought. It's in a nice 1980s brown, which I guess is an acquired taste. As I said before, I think these age extremely well. Because of the low miles and kind of one family ownership, this one sold for £57,000, which is a huge amount of money. Like I say, it's just this premium I can't quite compute in my head that people pay for low mileage cars. You know, that to me, that's a premium of £25,000 over a still decent condition one, but for higher mileage. Anyway, that seems to be the market value apparently, so it's a lot of money for a 635. So here is an even lower mileage E36 M3 Evolution convertible. I think this was 43,000 miles. It didn't sell. They're wanting £19,000 for it, which in the context of the other one, I suppose is about right. To me, it's a lot of money for an E36. But it is unusually low mileage. You'll struggle to find one with lower mileage than that. And then another car, you don't actually see many of these. So a Renault 5 GT Turbo. This is the kind of final edition car, 1989. This looks in beautiful condition. Apparently had £20,000 invested in restoring it. I don't know really about the values of these, I have to be honest, because when you look online, they're all over the place. So I've really got no idea what these actually sell for, because I haven't really seen many sell. If you know, please let me know in the comments. This one sold for £26,000. I mean, looking at it, it looks superb. And so potentially quite good value, given that it's had 20,000 spent on it recently. Yeah, nice looking car. And then another really interesting car. So this VW KARMANN GHIA, so this is 1970. It's been extensively modified, and you can see here in wonderful condition. I mean, look at that engine. I mean, wow. And you can see it's been slammed and lowered. Just, I mean, look at that. It looks epic. This one surprised me because often modified classic cars don't fetch the value that their standard versions do. This one, however, you know, I think you could get a KARMANN GHIA, I don't know what, 25,000 maybe, a decent one. This went for £42,000. Now, I've no doubt it's worth it. It looks absolutely fantastic and I love it. I was surprised because it's a modified car, extensively modified, and I just didn't think it would have that kind of value. And then, you know, speaking of modified cars, so a Golf GTI Mark 1 here, which fetched decent money, extensively modified, and perhaps you can get away with it slightly more on a Golf GTI where, you know, the kind of aftermarket tuner scene was maybe a bit bigger. So this one's running, I think, 200 horsepower. It's been restored, upgraded, retrimmed inside, £50,000 spent on it. I mean, just amazing. For me, it's the wrong colour, in white. I don't like white cars, personal taste. Sold for £21,000. Now, in the context of it having 50,000 spent on it, it seems like good value. Yeah. If that was black, I'd like it. And another one that surprised me price-wise, so this is a 1992 Land Rover Defender. It's a 200 TDI engine, 110 wheelbase, and this is an ex-Camel Trophy, so the kind of the rally racing that they did with Land Rover. Now, this surprised me because it basically needs some restoration. You can see here, I don't think it's in terrible condition, but obviously flat tyre sitting here in the garage. Some restoration work clearly required. It's sold for £35,000. To me, that again, it seems crazy. Yes, I know the ex-Camel Trophy ones are rare. It seems a big premium to pay for a Land Rover that needs some work. It's 112,000 miles, so how much is the ex-Camel status added to that value? 25 grand to the price of that, which seems a lot in my opinion. And then the other end of the scale with the RS Turbo, we saw one that sold for 50 grand earlier, is this one, Series 2, needs recommissioning, but it sold for £9,000. So there you go, it's the other end of the spectrum. It's also 146,000 miles, but I guess this is the problem. If you just look at the auction results without the detail, you'll see one at £50,000, one at £9,000. Now obviously you can deduce there's differences in condition and mileage, but it's just so hard to value these cars unless you have a good intricate look at them. And again, a very cheap Jaguar E-Type, so Series 3 V12, unused, I think since 1973, which seems amazing because it doesn't actually look that bad condition in the photos. It's clearly going to need a lot of recommissioning. Sold for £25,000 though, which is cheap for an E-Type. So that's all of the lots that there were from the Saturday of the auction. This was a 2-day auction, and I'll just talk through some of the ones that interested me in the Sunday section now. Before I do, if you like this video, if you want to see some of my other auction videos and some of the other cars I've got, please do consider subscribing, hit the bell icon. There'll be another couple of live auction videos coming in the next month. And I've also just launched memberships. I'll do a proper launch video, but you can get members-only polls, members-only shorts, photos, status updates, etc. So do check that out if you're interested. And now on to Sunday's cars. Triumph Dolly, so Dolomite Sprint, had a full engine restoration, load spent on it, lovely looking car, sold for £16,000. Which probably seems about right. I'm not an expert on these for a Dolly Sprint in good condition. Yeah, nice looking thing. And then on to probably one of the best value Ferraris you can get. This is a 1996 Ferrari 456 GTA. So this was the V12 front engine Tourer that they did. Sold for £30,000. You know, for a V12 Ferrari, it's cheap, isn't it? Okay, they may not be the most desirable. And they could cost you a lot of money, but this is only 31,000 miles. It looks like it's been stored for a while, had some recommissioning, but I'd suggest that it may well require more spending on it. It's only had a light recommissioning, I think. Even so, 30 grand for a V12 Ferrari. And then another 500 SL. This one is an R107, so previous to the 129 we saw earlier. 106,000 miles, so obviously 5 litre V8 in these. I get very nervous with any of these about rust, perhaps just because I've seen too many rusty ones. I think these look great this year, only 107. This sold for 12 grand, which seems like quite good value to me. It looks like it was probably average condition and maintenance records, so yeah, perhaps that tells the story. I think, you know, good ones of these will fetch significantly more than that. And then a Range Rover Classic. So this is 1981, 3-door, 3.9 litre V8. These had, of course, fully rebuilt and refurbished. It says, I think, only 25,000 miles, 24,000 miles, sorry, which seems incredibly low. This sold for £39,000. You know, these fetch a lot of money, and if it really is in as good condition as the description suggests, it's probably not such bad value. And then a CLIO Williams. So these are ever popular, it seems. This one's had quite a lot of work, tuned to 170 brake horsepower, had a new gearbox earlier in its life. It's done 114,000 miles. It looks in decent condition. I think it's been very well cared for. And this sold for £8,000, which I think seems really good value. Yeah, I think that was a good buy. Then an Aston Martin DB9 Volante. This is a 2007, so I guess one of the fairly early DB9s. V12, of course, 5.9 litre V12. These are getting cheap now, so not the Volantes necessarily, but I've seen these go for as low as just over £10,000. Admittedly, for pretty ropey ones of these at auction. This one looks very nice, I have to say. Nice interior, nice spec, well looked after. And at 43,000 miles, it's pretty low mileage for one of these. So it went for £25,000, which sounds about right for that kind of car. For me, they're just a bit too dated now. I would get one if they're, you know, perhaps £12,000 to £15,000, but you've got to be quite careful in that price range because there are some ropey ones. And then what I think is good value, so a 2001 Bentley ARNAGE red label, so turbo V8. I think these ran something like 600 pound-foot of torque, which is nuts. Look at it inside. I mean, it's super luxury and opulence. Brilliant, love it. Obviously, you can get some pretty big bills with these, but this sold for £13,000. I mean, such a lot of car for your money. I think that's really good value. So another really interesting car here. So this is a 1972 Porsche with a 2.7 litre engine that was raced extensively. And this is interesting because it was actually at the auction that I went to, and you can see I've done a video on this, a race auction at Race Retro of ex-race cars, and there it didn't sell. It was guided at £50,000 to £60,000, and you can see I've got my my catalogue out from the auction. So this was actually another iconic auction at Race Retro. When was this? It's 22nd of February. As I say, I've got a video on it, and this didn't sell, guided at 50 to 60. What did it sell for here? £37,000. So that just shows you where the market thought it was, and just shows you how wrong some of the guide prices can be if you want to sell it. Very interesting. So we've seen some Golf GTIs. I think was a couple of Mark IIs at the beginning. They were 8 valves. This one is a Mark II 16 valve Golf GTI, fully restored, just under 100,000 miles. This one sold for £13,500, which seems fair if it's been fully restored. So another Focus RS. This one is a Mark I. Seen some really strong values of these, as I've seen a lot sell at auction in the last 2 years or so. Good ones of these reach, and very low mileage ones reaching into the low 30s. Good moderate to low miles, I would say kind of mid 20s or something. This one looks like a very good example. Loads of history, only 41,000 miles, and it sold for £24,000. So that looks about right to me. Interesting that you know, you can get a Mark II and a Mark III cheaper than that now. So Audi Quattro here, 20 valves. This is one of the latest Quattros, the RR. This is a shade under 100,000 miles. These fetch good money, and it sold for £45,000. Loads of history with it. You know, I'm not an expert on these, and prices are all over the place, but it seems about right to me. So we've done Mark II Focus RS, we've done Mark I Focus RS. Here's the Mark III Focus RS, and this one has ludicrously low mileage, under 2,000 miles, 2018 model, so these obviously the 2.3 turbo engine. I mean, just nuts. It's been serviced regularly despite doing 1,800 miles. Why someone would get a car like this and not use it that much, I don't know. It's not me. Each to their own, of course. I think it's been extensively shown, etc. So, you know, it's immaculate condition. It sold for £35,000. Now, considering what some of the ultra-low mileage cars go for, you know, I'm thinking, I've seen things like Aston Martin V8s and things go for really quite a lot of money. I actually think that's not bad money, £35,000 for virtually unused Mark III Focus RS. Don't get me wrong, it's still a lot of money, but as I say, as ultra-low mileage cars go, I think that's not bad. And speaking of Aston Martins, Here is an Aston Martin V8 Series 3, so this one's a 1974. This is a garage find. It's been unused for quite some years by the sounds of it, needs recommissioning. These are lovely looking things though. I'd like a Volante. The convertible indeed, I think, personally looks much better. Still a lovely looking car. And given it's sat in a garage for quite some time, it doesn't look terrible condition. I've seen worse ones, put it that way. Good ones of these can fetch, what, 100,000 or something? So this sold for £48,000. Obviously needs quite a bit of work, but I suppose about right. So there was a couple of Volvo P1800s. I love this design. I've got quite a soft spot for these. These were fetching really good money, I think, up until a couple of years ago. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the values are starting to come down quite steeply. So this one, for example, had £12,000 spent on it since 2020, including a full engine rebuild, and it sold for £18,000. To me, that seems like brilliant value. You can't tell a condition. I admit these can suffer from rust from what I've seen of them, but I think that looks great value. So onto something a bit more modern, Mercedes SL55. So these were the supercharged 5.5, 5.4 litre V8 engine. Good ones of these, mid-teens, I guess. This one is rare because it has the rare F1 package. So that had quite a lot of goodies. It had a different front, I believe. I think it had limited slip diff, it had extra oil cooler, different suspension. So, you know, it was a good package. I think 8.5 grand or something new, that package, but you got quite a lot for it. And they're quite rare. This one, 56,000 miles, so fairly low mileage for an SL55. Sold for nearly £33,000. That's a huge premium, you know, almost getting on for 20 grand premium for that F1 pack. I mean, it looks lovely, don't get me wrong. And they are rare, the F1 packs, but it seems a lot of money to pay for it to me. So here's an interesting car, one of the most desirable Capris, so a Brooklands Capri. Apparently unrestored, but been owned for a decade and only 28,000 miles. This sold for £30,000. That's a lot of money for a Capri, but it's a lovely looking thing and it is one of the most desirable ones you can get. And then another more modern car, an Evo 9 wagon. So this is cool, Mitsubishi Lancer, obviously all the rally sport with the practical estate version. Really rare to see an estate. I thought they were JDM only, Japanese market only. I might be wrong. Yeah, it looks like it came from Japan, reading it. Yes, here we go. So only available to the Japanese market. So they're quite rare, 58,000 miles. It was unsold. It's a really niche taste. I think, you know, an Evo 9 is relatively niche taste anyway. Not many people want the wagons despite them being rare. So 24 grand for that if you're interested. And then we see perhaps the ultimate Mark II GTI 16 valve from this auction. Fully restored, trophy winning example, looks absolutely magnificent, but you pay a lot for that. You pay £38,000 for that, for a Mark II Golf GTI. Now, it's fantastic, don't get me wrong, but it's still 38 grand for a Mark II Golf GTI. What do you think? I think my problem is with those high value cars, I don't feel like I'm getting value for money. I always want to feel like I'm getting value for money. I'm not sure I would with that. And then we've got an R129 SL500 again. This one sold for 5.5 grand roughly. I imagine it probably wasn't in the best condition if it went for that price. It's hard to tell from photos. And another one for good measure, another SL500 R129. This one looks beautiful and well maintained, and consequently £13,500. So, you know, it really does just show, look at the difference, and the engine bay is lovely. It really does show how you have to go on condition and see these cars. I mean, you could kind of tell the other one wasn't looking so great, but you know, this is sold for 2.5 times more than the other one. I'm always interested in Land Rovers, as you might know if you've seen my videos. Series 1, the only age of Land Rover I've not owned actually. I've got a Series 2 and a Series 3 and a Defender at the moment. This one was an 86-inch wheelbase, 1956. It looks like it's been really nicely restored. Paintwork looks great. It didn't sell though, 19,500. These used to sell for such big money. These have come down a huge amount in the last few years, I think. is obviously the 86-inch wheelbase, not nearly so desirable as the shorter, the 80-inch wheelbase, which we'll go on to now because there was one of those as well. You know, this is just the kind of, in my eyes, kind of irony about it. 1949, so one of the most desirable 80-inch wheelbase Series 1 Land Rovers. Look at it. I mean, I love these unrestored ones, don't get me wrong. This one sold for about the same money as the other one is on a buy it now for, so just under 20 grand. But look at it, you know, it's well worn. I'm not criticising it. I prefer, as I say, this kind of look on a Land Rover. The other one's kind of restored and shiny, etc., and it doesn't sell for the same money. So it just shows you how important it is with these Series 1 to get the right age of Series 1. These 80 inches are so much more desirable. A lovely looking Mercedes 560 SEC, so what these 5.5 litre V8, 5.6 litre V8, sorry. I suspect this probably needs a bit of work or isn't in great condition because these can sell for a lot more than that. Beautiful pillarless design though. An amazing looking RS Turbo, Ford Escort RS Turbo, fully restored Series 1. 50 grand's worth spent on this. So, you know, exquisite condition as you would expect for that. It looks perfect. I mean, look at that engine bay, for example. Sold for £52,000. Wow, that's a lot for an Escort RS Turbo. They're getting up to Mark 1 Escort Mexico standards now, aren't they? Yeah, fast forward seem to do pretty well still at auction. So there you go, that's my quick run through. I think it's a real mixed bag. I think it's highly condition dependent, which is why you need to go and see them, as I keep banging on about. But the low mile cars seem to be fetching still a huge premium. There doesn't seem to be a drop off there. And then other than that, I think it's quite marque dependent. It really depends what you're interested in. The Fords still seem to be holding their value well. And indeed some of the Golfs, you know, a good Golf GTI fetches a lot of money. I think there's still some bargains in there. But yeah, the markets, I think it's very marque dependent, and the only ones that are fetching really, really strong money seem to be these either ultra rare limited editions, which you'd expect, or the ultra low miles. Everything else, you know, seems kind of moderately priced, I would say. So interesting to see how the market goes. I'll be going to lots more auctions soon, so please do like and subscribe, and thank you very much for watching.